Sonia, how about you? Like, how do you see? Do you have enemies? Like, what are you?
I do have enemies.
Yeah, who are your enemies?
Dasha was talking about genocide, but I wouldn't agree with that because
They're not responsible for what, like, Trump is doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and you're not responsible for what Putin is doing.
I guess so.
Well, do you feel responsible? So whether the law is just or not, it doesn't really matter. Right here, we don't have any laws against, you can speak out against the U.S. Army or U.S. military or whatever. There's no laws against that yet.
You're making a conscious choice whether to go or not to go, even if you're on contract, whatever it is.
But
you make a choice.
But if you don't go, I mean, the Russians, the Russian government is throwing a lot of people in prison and so on who aren't going.
Then
like,
you're just choosing.
Russia, like your country was like the evil empire, man.
From your side.
From our side, yeah. What were we from your side? What happens if Mexico decides we're done with any alliance with the United States? We're actually going to align ourselves with Russia. And so all of Mexico is going to be part of Russia. We'll put some nuclear missiles there. We'll do like the whole 9 yards because Mexico's going to really align ourselves with the enemy of the United States. What do you think Americans would say about that? You think we'd be like... Do you have enemies?
I wouldn't say that I have enemies. Okay, yeah, no, I do.
Yeah. But who are your enemies?
I would say the government that is going out there killing civilians, innocent kids, innocent people, elderly people. I just don't think that that's a good thing to do. Let's put it like that. I don't think it's something moral and human-like. I wouldn't say that it's like enemy, because, but it's still something that hurts me and something that I would rather not see nowadays in the 21st century, in 2025.
So you would just use the word enemies loosely in that sense?
I mean, absolutely, I dislike it.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I have some negative feelings about it.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, if I'm going to talk about like Sonia in here, right, she is supportive of whatever is happening, like on my side, not supportive of like genocide and other things.
Uh-huh.
And I can't just assume that all people who are Russians are bad, and I can't just like hold the grudge on them just because they were born and raised in there. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Sonia, how about you? Like, how do you see? Do you have enemies? Like, what are you?
I do have enemies.
Yeah, who are your enemies?
It's weird because like Dasha is Ukrainian and she was like so kind about it and everything, so soft. I do have enemies and I absolutely hate people who support war. And these are my like biggest enemies, I would say, and I would never talk to these people, communicate in any way. Unfortunately, I have, if I think about that, I do have people who are like closely related to me and supported war because I mean I live in Russia, so it's not gonna happen that everyone is against it, right? Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, I had to either burn the bridges or just get used to not communicating with these people. It just bothers me too much because for me it's not only about politics; it's about who you are as a human. Like if you support that, I don't think there's anything we can talk about, even if it's not related to politics. So I do absolutely have enemies.
Gregory, you see, you're in a different position, right? Because you're going whatever. You're going back to Russia. You like have,
Yeah.
Do you have enemies?
I wouldn't say that I have enemies, and I wouldn't say that Russians perceive Ukrainians as enemies, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because like. I don't know, because we were all part of a big country, like Russians, Ukrainians, Belarus people, I don't know how it is for Ukrainians. We see them as like our brothers, sort of.
Yeah.
And even if like Dasha, right? Dasha was talking about genocide, but I wouldn't agree with that because even if we look, I've checked some data before coming here, and...
well, let me just ask you this question. If I'm walking in the streets of in Russia, the average person isn't seeing the average Ukrainian as an enemy.
No.
Just like in the United States, the average person isn't seeing truly, even people say, oh, that Canadians are our enemies, but really most people aren't.
I would say more Russians would view U.S. as an enemy.
Yeah, would view the U.S., yeah. And most Americans, truthfully, wouldn't be saying that about the Canadians. Like, people just are kind of following. And so people aren't really thinking.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so.
They go along. And then people, like you're not, none of you are responsible for what these, well, first off, the two of you are in the U.S. now, so this is different, right? You have residency here, but not citizenship, but you both have residency, right? Okay, so they're not responsible for what, like, Trump is doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and you're not responsible for what Putin is doing.
I guess so.
Well, do you feel responsible?
No, like, I don't really care. Like, I remember Sonia was talking here that she's like a bit of ashamed that she's Russian. Like, if someone thinks that the fact that I'm Russian is some kind of a problem, I don't care about them.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to you, right? Same with me. Like, if I go somewhere, a lot of these Americans right now, there's a lot of conversation about Americans traveling now. I'm starting to see it in social media, and people saying like, hey, when you travel now, people are going to have all these ideas about you and hate on you and so on and so forth, right?
Like, no one cares about you, to be honest. Like, you're the last thing anyone cares about.
So if Americans go to Russia right now, people are going to just ignore them, basically?
Yeah.
Just like,
they're going to be like American in Russia, like, okay, like, that's cool, but
yeah,
you're not going to get oppressed or anything.
Yeah, let's go have
Unless
a beer.
you, like, come with wheat, like Brittany Griner or something.
Oh, yeah, right.
Can I say the part that I see when I go back to Russia?
Yeah.
I was back there exactly a year ago, and people do care about Ukraine, and people do hate Ukraine there.
Yeah.
And
No, they hate, they become, Ukrainians become the enemies.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Why do you think so? Like, what do you think it is that what do people see? The people
Propaganda.
you were talking to, what do people see?
just for context, my ex-boyfriend's mother, she would just watch TV the entire time, and she would just like hear this propaganda and just believe it. Like, I'm not even lying, there would be scenes using green screen that would kind of like portray Ukrainians being like mean to Russians or doing something to Russians.
Yeah.
So this propaganda goes on national TV, and Russians see it and they believe it.
So-
and then they go and they tell their kids about it, and then their kids tell their friends about it, and this is how it goes.
So how different is that than pretty much anywhere else in the world?
It is. I feel like it's a little different. There are
A little
levels.
different. What do
There
you,
are levels to this. That's
Okay.
the thing. You know, in America, there are a lot of propaganda as well, as you know. But this country has the freedom of speech, right? Even though sometimes it's like not actually true and everything, but still there is freedom of speech. Still, you can publish something and not being like sent to prison for that. This does not happen in Russia. Like, I know that
at the same level.
exactly, yeah. So our family friend, I don't know, maybe people on YouTube will know that. Her name is Zhenya Berkovich, and she was actually writing scripts and just little poems.
Yeah.
She was sent to prison while having adopted kids. She was a single mother. She was sent to prison,
Okay.
and no one cared
Well,
because she was pro-Ukrainian.
yeah, okay. I hear that. Listen.
Can I get into this one a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like technically there are laws which prohibit you from like propaganda against Russian army and from
Yeah, you can't promote propaganda.
Yeah,
you can't
like
say things against
that's
the
the thing
Russian
which
army.
started like
Yeah.
when the conflict started, and there's also like TikTok is not working in Russia not because it got banned or something, but because they are afraid that they're going to be sued for misinformation.
Yeah.
So I don't see how if you are pro-Ukrainian in Russia and you break a law, like That's a bit of your problem, kind of. Like, if you want to be pro-Ukrainian, leave the country.
Okay, so that's the idea. No, here, let me just throw this out in your way. So right now, we're struggling with this in the United States, okay? Immigrants who are here, who break laws, a bunch of people just got sent back, right? Are getting sent back to their country, getting their visas revoked, okay? So, breaking a law.
Yeah.
So whether the law is just or not, it doesn't really matter. Right here, we don't have any laws against, you can speak out against the U.S. Army or U.S. military or whatever. There's no laws against that. Yet, we might have some coming up. And by the time we do have some, when we start having those laws, you're going to watch the number of Americans who support that. It starts down here, and then it's going to start to grow and grow and grow because people are going to start to accept the narrative that it's a bad idea to critique the military of the U.S. government, right? They're going to start, and so it's going to start here. Hang on, and we're going to get it. It's going to start here, and then it's going to grow, and suddenly Americans will be like, yeah, of course you can't speak out against the president of the United States or the government or something. Like, that just becomes a thing. And then you got to ask, like, okay, well, it's a law now, so da-da-da. You're sort of saying
Yeah,
that in a
like,
way.
it doesn't mean that I support this law. I'm just saying that it's a law, and, we are kind of like in this not the best position ever, and it's we are in a conflict, and so that's one of the things why this law was implemented. It's
Got you. So listen, so here's what you're saying. You're just speaking what is. There's a sociologist friend of mine calls this like naturalistic sociology. You're just saying like, this is just what is. There's a law there. You can't break the law. If you break the law, then whatever. You're not saying it's a good thing. You're just saying like, yeah, well, that's what it is.
Do you know why the law is there?
Yeah, because we have a conflict, and we don't want to have any kind of not misunderstanding, but you don't want any more problems inside the country when you are like at this big of a crisis.
Dude,
Yeah, but
hang
don't
on,
you
hang on,
think this
hang
is a
on.
dictatorship?
No, hang on. That's a different story. This is naturalistic sociology here in a second, right? He's not saying it's right or wrong. This is really, really interesting. He's saying, look, man, we're in the middle of a war. Forget about whether the war is just, doesn't matter, the secondary, it's irrelevant, right? You're in the middle of a war. You got to control your population. And so you can't have people like undermining what this thing is about. The government, whatever it is, the government maybe didn't get elected democratically. Let's assume. I followed the elections in Russia. I wouldn't go to Vegas and bet on the fact that the recent elections that put Putin in power were truly fair and democratic.
But to be honest, he would win even if he weren't fair.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Okay, so the point being, it's not any of that. It's just like, yeah, well, that's what it is.
So going back to like the enemy conversation, right? I was in Ukraine visiting my family because I still have, it's just me, my mom, and like my stepdad who's been here for the past like 30 years, right?
Uh-huh.
So I was visiting my friends, my family in there, right? And it is very scary in there.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to say this. And Gregory is saying that obviously there's, like if you were as Ukrainian going to go to Russia, they're not going to hate on you. But we all have social medias, right? And it is really common. For example, you have Ukrainian flag in your bio. For people to start texting you, oh, I wish you this and this and that. I'm not going to say whatever.
Yeah, no, I hear
right?
that.
And this hate comes from what Sonia said,
Yeah.
right? From this brainwashing, from this propaganda. And there's people who don't really get themselves into it. They don't learn about it. They just go with whatever government says, as you mentioned earlier. And I think that a lot of this hate is unreasonable because, again, there's people who didn't do anything. I've seen people struggling with it, moving from cities to cities, losing their houses, losing their jobs. And just because this is happening, there's obviously some hate coming on us,
Well-
because otherwise it wouldn't be a thing.
Well, here, let me ask you this. Right now, in the United States, with tariffs and so on, right? You don't have any control over that, right? So you can be against it, for it, whatever. It doesn't really matter. You have no control over it. So, in fact, any opinion you have, whether you support the tariffs or are against the tariffs, it goes against half the population, because half the population supports and half the population is against. So people are going to look at you and be like, hey, you're not on our team. You're not on our side. So therefore, you become the enemies. You're on the other side.
Yeah, and I totally understand that, and I totally understand that there's different views, different opinions, and I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter that you're a bad person just because you think differently than I do, but I'm just acknowledging the fact that I feel like it is wrong to be saying for everyone in there that there's no hate and nobody's going to do anything to you.
No, hang on. Though, I think that, hey, Gregory, I think you were speaking in the way that I speak. Like, hey, man, look, first off, I've only been in St. Petersburg in Russia, so I don't
Fine.
know. Yeah. It's like, but most people are living their lives, just getting on with their lives, not paying attention to.
Like, I wouldn't say that they don't pay attention because, it's kind of like a big thing.
No,
but
you pay attention at a certain level, but you're busy inside your own life.
Yeah, I would say that there were like, maybe then it all started, it was like a couple of first 2 months maybe. Then everyone was like, okay, it is what it is. Everyone's hopes that it ends as soon as possible. And then there are some kind of like, big spikes in your interest when something happens.
And
Like,
then,
I would say that we were like outside of like the start of military operation.
Yeah.
There was like 2 more spikes than I don't know if you know like Yevgeny Prigozhin, who was
Yeah. Yeah.
when he started his he started going towards Moscow,
Yeah.
and like he captured one of the biggest cities in Russia. That was like a bit of a spike in interest, and I would say then the mobilization like of the troops started.
Mm-hmm.
That was also one. So like in the past 2 years, nothing big that would make everyone pay attention happened.
So these Ukrainian soldiers, bro, are they your enemy?
Not mine specifically.
Not your enemy, but they are the enemy of the other soldiers, the Russian soldiers, right? They're the enemy of these guys, but they're not your enemy.
I didn't know in person what to say that, so.
Yeah, so for you, it's just a thing. Hey, the Russian soldiers, I mean, for you, you're Russian, right? Are they the enemy?
Personally, for me, yeah.
You would say so?
Yeah, they're my enemies.
Why are they an enemy?
Because there's always a choice. You're making a conscious choice, whether to go or not to go. Even if you're on contract, whatever it is,
but
you make a choice.
But if you don't go, I mean, the Russians, the Russian government is throwing a lot of people in prison and so on who aren't going.
Then
Like,
you're just choosing. You're
but-
just choosing to be
Yeah.
human.
Yeah.
And you're choosing between morals and convenience. It's a hard choice. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. I don't know how people are able to make this choice.
Well,
but I'm
it's-
still saying it is a choice.
Yeah, but maybe it's a difficult. This is the nationalism piece here. These guys, right? They grew up in a world where their level of understanding is limited by what they have access to, and people in this classroom, they're not much older than a lot of people in the classroom. Well, a lot of these guys are probably, right? We're all limited. We're all trying to figure shit out. Right, we're all nationalistic at some level. It's a little bit different for you because you're living in 2 different worlds. But like all these people here, who are the Americans, when the United States went to war, and we're bombing Iraqis, and 500,000 Iraqi civilians are dying. Nobody here the people are waving the flag, "Go America, support our troops." People don't stop and say, oh, last month, like 10,000 Iraqi civilians, mostly women and children, just died from our bombs. Like, I can't support our troops. They're going to still support the troops because they're the troops. That's the nation. That's the flag. That's what it is. Do you have anything? Do you see that? Does it make sense?
It does make sense to a degree to me because, like, I understand. I can put myself in someone else's shoes and look at the situation from a different perspective.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, who I am, where my morals stand, and what these people are doing to my people, I understand, as Sonia said, like, this is a hard decision, but at the end of the day, you have a choice. You can figure it out. And as of me, they are on Ukrainians' territories. They crossed the border. They went, so they automatically they automatically are enemies.
So, yeah, right. But they're not necessarily going to see that. They don't necessarily think that, because I can make a really strong argument that they really didn't cross much of a border. You can make that argument. I can make the argument. So, but the idea being, like, what's an enemy mean? Like, when you look at them, like, what's it really mean? Like, because if your family, your whatever, grew up where they grew up, they'd be traveling in that direction. They'd do the same thing.
I mean, we can start from 2014, the annexation of Crimea, and now in 2022, the full-scale invasion. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Right. And when I'm looking at them, I'm thinking about, like, oh, those people come into my country not with peace. They come into my country to take away lives of innocent people, kids, elderlies. That's what I think.
That's how you see it.
That's how I see it.
So therefore, and for you can't see it. Can you see it from the Russian? Can you make an argument for the Russian perspective? Can the two of you make an argument? They would be like, yeah, I can make this argument from a Russian perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, I can. So a lot of people know how the government works in Russia, right? So they might not have much choice, and they just go there. So it's easier for them. They would rather go and fight than protest and do something in there. But there's also a lot about what's in their mind, why they're going there to fight. I can't know why they're going to fight. I can't know what they think of us as a nation. Do they think what they've been told, or do they have a different perspective on it, and they don't want to fight, and they're going there because they don't have a choice,
because they don't have a choice, yeah. A lot of people, they don't have a choice. Here, let me just I want to make an argument really quick. I want to just talk for a second. Can you go to the next slide? In the Cold War, basically the US and the USSR kind of divided the world up into the blue and the red. The dark blue is NATO, okay? So this is the alliance of NATO in the West. And everything light blue is connected to NATO. The red is the Soviet Union, okay? And then the pink are other nations that were aligned with the Soviet Union. And basically, this was it, man. We were fighting. And this was the side of which is kind of interesting, that Russia, your country, was like the evil empire, man.
From your side.
From our side, yeah. What were we from your side?
I don't know, from my side, it's my country, so,
it's just
your
USSR.
evil side, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's just USSR. That's what it was to your parents and grandparents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just their nation. And we were the evil empire. And for us, you were the evil empire, which makes it so interesting now when we hear Trump talking so positively about Russia. It's so weird for us, you know what I mean? Because it's like, wait, this was the evil side. Okay, so anyway, 1990 here. So here is the Soviet Union, okay? All of these states. And then here we are in 2015, all of these states. And here is Ukraine. So Ukraine was up in here. Now, Ukraine becomes its own. This is your nation, becomes its own individual nation. But it was part of the Soviet Union. And now it's its own individual nation. And it exists between Russia and NATO. This is all NATO here. And then the Soviet Union breaks down, and these nations that were part of the Soviet Union get aligned with NATO, and you got Ukraine right in the center, man. And Russia says, damn, we lost all these areas here, okay? So you got this? So I'm going to walk you through from a Russian perspective, my friend. We lost all this to NATO. We lost it all. These were our allies. And we're saying, dude, you can't have Ukraine. Like, you got NATO, you can't come take Ukraine. And here, let me show you why. Because this is Ukraine. You read through that. That's what Ukraine has right there. And your country said, that's all there. You can't take that. And NATO says, okay. And Ukraine, your people say, yeah, but you know what, man? Russia, which is now Russia, yeah, if we look at Russia, the West, we'd rather align ourselves with the West because, like, come on, man, the West is just cooler. No offense, bro. No offense, because Russia's cool too. I got it. But all these Ukrainians, not everybody, but a lot of them are going like, yeah, we want to align ourselves with the West. But the West said, okay, but we won't do that. We won't force this issue. Okay? We won't force the issue because we're all fighting a global war with each other. Whether we like it or not, we really are at war with this guy's country, man.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So thing was that if you see, and you might know from history, Germany was divided after World War II into West and East Germany.
Right here.
And East Germany, was under control of Soviets. I might be wrong here, but I think that then Berlin Wall fell down.
We took it down in 1989.
So what happened is basically USSR signed some kind of a pact with NATO countries that we're not going to expand eastwards. And
but we did.
Yeah, and
took Germany. We did Poland.
Thing here is that like USSR collapsed like a year or two after, and NATO said like we made this deal with USSR, not Russia. Yeah. So like you are not USSR. We haven't made a deal with you. And moreover, like in 2000s, Putin asked NATO to be a part of it. He asked. I think he was talking to Bill Clinton. I might be tripping, but he asked. Dude,
like, hang on. You can't say I might be tripping.
Okay.
All right. You can say that in the U.S., but you can't say that,
Okay. So he asked Bill Clinton if Russia can join NATO, and Bill Clinton was like, "Oh yeah, that would be good." And then they told him like, "Nah, you can't join NATO because like, what's the whole point of NATO if you are gonna join?"
Yeah, exactly. We don't have Okay, so listen. So hang on a second, right? So we're not. This isn't taking. You don't have to. Yeah. This isn't taking Putin's side or Russia's side. But my question is this: if you are here, right? You just happen to be from Ukraine, and you know that. You ask the Ukrainians, like, where do you want to go? You want to go this way or you want to go this way? It's not really that surprising. Do nothing against your country, all right? Once again, it's not that surprising that a lot of people are going, like, yeah, I want to go toward the West. But can you see that people are like, no, you can't do that. Like, you can't, these resources, the whole thing, like, you can't do that. Could you see that?
Yeah, I can absolutely see that, but I also can see, I'm going to speak on the behalf of Ukrainians, right? As Ukraine, its own independent, democratic country who wants to join European Union because we're talking about democracy. We're not talking about communism and like other stuff on the other side, and dictatorship. And that would be rational to want to have it for the people, to join it for democracy and go there. Let
me ask you this question though. Now you're a U.S. citizen, right? Well, I mean, you're a U.S. resident. You're going to be a citizen, okay? What happens if Mexico decides, you know what? This is for you too, right? Okay? Mexico decides, we're done with any alliance with the United States. We're actually going to align ourselves with Russia, okay? The enemy of the United States. Little changes a little bit now with Donald Trump, but basically still our enemy, okay? We're going to align ourselves with with Russia, and so all of Mexico is going to be part of Russia. We'll put some nuclear missiles there. We'll do like the whole 9 yards because Mexico's going to really align ourselves with the enemy of the United States. What do you think Americans would say about that? You think we'd be like, yeah, all right, that's cool, no problem, man. Just stay on your side of the border? Or do you think we'd have something to say about that? Even though the citizens of Mexico are saying, like, no, we're voting for this. This is what we want. Do you think the United States would be like, okay, that's cool, whatever y'all want?
I mean, there's definitely good sides and bad sides, but I would say the relationship of the United States as a country towards Mexico and relationship of the United States towards a country like Russia, like it's a different relationship that they have.
I got you, but forget that. Set that aside for a second, okay? I just want to do a mind test here. Sonia, what do you think Mexico decides? We're aligning with Russia. Everything is all about Russia. It's all good, right?
I cannot talk on behalf of all Americans because I'm also not an American yet, unfortunately.
Yeah, but what do you think the U.S. government would say? Do you think we'd just be like, all right, that's cool, man. You know, you all just like
depends who stays a president. If it's going to be Trump, then I can see the same thing happening in Russia. Yeah, because Trump is actually, you can see a clear pattern. He's going the same exact direction Putin
Okay, so
was
and the
going.
American people would say like,
No, I don't know. Again, I don't know about American people. I'm saying on behalf of like American government, they would probably want to do something like invasion again or try to control an
wait,
independent
you mean
country.
we would want to invade Mexico? to
Again,
be
not
like,
we, government.
The government would.
Yeah, if Trump is staying, if everything is like that,
Okay.
as it is right now, yeah, I think that.
Okay, then that means this guy, what we're saying here about Russia in Ukraine, what we're saying about this, it's like, yeah, all right. I mean, well, that kind of makes that makes sense that people would have that idea, and you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree with it. It's just like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I was just about to say that it's also not just like about what people want, but international relations, how it affects, like what countries, how they're working together.
I got that. That's
another conflict that is coming out of this. They say Mexico joining Russia. There's a conflict coming out because of international relations that they have.
Can you? Okay, I hear that. So these guys right here, if you grow up with the idea that like, wait, hang on a second, you tell the story like I just told it. Can you see these guys going like, yeah, we got to go stop this NATO invasion of these lands that are really important to us because of all the resources. Like, man, we're looking out for ourselves. Go back to all that list of resources. Like, this just makes sense. Like, yeah, I gotta like.
Sam, can we ask then, since almost all of people here are Americans, you said if the exact same thing happened with like Mexico being with Russia and everything, would it be a great way to solve the problem by invading their country or doing something like that? Can you ask the class how many people would think?
I can ask them. I know no one's going to say it would be a good idea to invade the country. However, no one's going to say that. However, bro, listen. When push came to shove and the American government said, we got to go take Mexico back because the Mexicans decided to go this way, and that's too dangerous for us, and we got to go take it back, the vast majority of Americans would be waving their flags and supporting the troops, because that's what people do. And so when I look at these Russian soldiers here, I'm like, well, they have their own story, okay? And when I look at the fast forward to the Ukrainian soldiers, they have their story. And I'm not saying whose side, there's no side here. We're just talking sociologically to understand enemies. And that we're going to create a story about enemies that makes sense. We're going to create a story that makes sense of who our enemies are. That's how we're going to operate.
But I also think about it as like we're talking about resources, right? And we're talking about NATO. Like Russia obviously doesn't want to have NATO close to them. But 1991 Ukrainian independence, there was a pact signed. And I feel like if it would have stayed the way it was after 1991, we have the protection, you have the resources, countries can work it out. There's a different problem lying there, that it's not just about NATO moving closer to Russia or Russia wanting the resources.
It's everything involved, right? It's everything involved. My point being, these folks here, and bro, you see that these guys, even the only people they're the enemy of are the Russian soldiers who are there firing bullets and missiles at them. But they're not the enemy of you.